Now, despite some lingering vaccine hesitancy in Germany, there has been a rush for jabs. Temporary vaccination centers are being set up to meet rising demand for the shots. Now, we have a video that shows a huge line of people of more than 2,000 who queued up in Hamburg to get vaccinated inside the city's Elbphilharmonie concert hall. Some waited up to 90 minutes to get inside. Around 2/3 of participants were receiving their first or second jabs, while 1/3 were there for a booster shot. Germany is one of the 60 countries to make boosters available. DW reporter Joel Delroy is tracking how the rollout is going. Joel, some are talking quite a bit about booster shots. We're talking about booster shots, but officials seem to be torn. Why is that?
Well, there's concern that wealthy countries are using the majority of vaccine doses for their booster shots and leaving poor countries unprotected. And I can show you some numbers that illustrate this vaccine inequality. Up to date, 53% of the world's population has been partially or fully inoculated against COVID-19, but only 5% of people in low-income countries have even gotten one shot. And the World Health Organization says that 6 times as many boosters are now being administered as first-time shots in low-income countries. I mean, consider that 6 times to 1 in terms of boosters to first shots.
So we see a great disparity there. Now, how is the rush to administer booster shots in wealthier nations affecting vaccine distribution globally?
Well, I can give you an example from right here in Germany. The health minister recently said that Germany would stop donating doses to the COVAX distribution scheme for developing countries. And he said he's going to do that because Germany wants to hang on to those doses for its booster shots over the coming months. At the same time, there's another issue at play, which is that Germany and other European countries are blocking attempts to waive the patents on COVID-19 vaccines and drugs, which campaigners would say if those patents were waived, it would free up production and would enable more low-income countries to be able to produce vaccines, thus compensating for this rush to use booster shots. Now, I wanted to know from this group, the People's Vaccine Alliance, who are pushing for this vaccine waiver, I wanted to know what we as individuals should do when we are offered a booster shot. Should we accept that dose or should we refuse it in the hope that it goes to someone else who needs it more somewhere else? So I spoke to Anna Marriott from the People's Vaccine Alliance and I put that question to her. Let's have a listen.
No, I think we have to continue along the approach, take the public health advice that our governments are giving to us. If we have an opportunity to take a booster vaccine, then let's do so. But let's call on our governments. It's our responsibility to call on our governments to unblock vaccine access for other countries. These are artificial limits that mean that health workers on the front line in developing countries are currently trying to save lives, but they themselves are unprotected. And it is immoral that a higher proportion of people in rich countries have had a booster vaccine, whilst people in the poorest countries haven't even seen their first dose. There are solutions on the table to fix that. We need the global community to come together, agree that waiver, and ramp up production so that we can solve this access crisis.
Well, the solutions that she was talking about there in that clip is a proposal that's going to be on the table next week at the World Trade Organization. It's a proposal brought by over 100 countries to waive or temporarily suspend the patents on COVID-19 vaccines and other medications in order to free up production. Now, the WTO will be debating that next week. We know that Germany and the European Union are currently opposed. Let's see if the fast-changing pandemic situation and this rush to use boosters does anything to change their position in the meantime.
DW reporter Joel Delroy, thanks for walking us through that, Joel. U.S. drug maker Pfizer is seeking approval for its experimental antiviral COVID-19 pill Paxlovid. In clinical trials, the drug has reduced the rate of hospitalization or death for adults by almost 90%. DW's Michael Hartleb reports.
This could be an important new weapon in the fight against the pandemic, a pill called Paxlovid. According to its manufacturer Pfizer, the drug has a very high efficacy when taken up to 5 days after the patient first develops COVID symptoms.
We're talking about an 89% reduction in hospitalizations and deaths for individuals symptomatic with COVID. It's also a big deal because these are pills that are easy to take It's 5 days of taking pills twice a day. So this means people can have these pills ready to go in their medicine cabinets. And if they then discover that they're symptomatic with COVID and they test positive, they can start taking the pills right away and not have to go into the hospital.
Paxlovid acts as a protease inhibitor. The viral protease is an enzyme that works like scissors and allows the virus to replicate in the cells. The drug binds to the enzyme, disables it, and thereby prevents the virus from multiplying. Compared to molnupiravir, another COVID pill produced by US drug maker Merck, it has a higher efficacy. However, with a price tag of €620 for a 5-day dose, Paxlovid doesn't come cheap. But Pfizer has said it will lower its prices for poorer countries.
This is a small molecule and therefore an oral drug in this particular case, which means that it's relatively easy to administer, short course of treatment, and potentially doesn't have to be that expensive to produce, and doesn't require people to go to hospital. So very suitable for low and middle income countries, which is essentially our constituency.
Now it's important to note the figures are only interim results. Other scientists will have to review Pfizer's data and the regulators will have to check the results. So it's unlikely that Paxlovid will be available before the end of this year.